We continue our discussion this evening about the looming health care vote in the Congress with a group that closely follows this issue. Lawrence O'Donnell of MSNBC. He is a former congressional staffer. Rich Lowry of the National Review in Washington. Norm Ornstein of the American Enterprise Institute. And Ezra Klein of the Washington Post. I am pleased to have all of them here. I should say that Mr. O'Donnell also is on MSNBC and also was formerly Chief of Staff of the Senate Finance Committee. Having said that, where are we?
Well, we're under President Clinton. We got the bill out of committee. We got killed on the Senate floor after about 5 days of debate and had to take it down. So as everyone knows, we've never gotten this far before. But this is one of those games where it doesn't matter if you get to the 1 yard line. You have to get into the end zone.
So what do you think is going to happen?
You know, I am weighted down with too much knowledge of how it works, so I don't see how they can do this. But I've been saying that all year. They've been pulling off plays that I didn't see how it could be done. Now, I didn't anticipate something as what I think is generally agreed to be crazy as giving the state of Nebraska a complete exemption on the new Medicaid costs in the bill. That's something that no one would have attempted prior to where we are here. And so there were many moves like that that I did not see coming. And because in the old world, if you did that for Nebraska, I'm sorry, but there's 49 other states that you have to deal with within the next half hour.
Right.
And so so there've been a lot of moves that I couldn't anticipate, and we're at a spot though where what we know about it, everything we know about it procedurally is something that has never occurred before, and I never bet on first-time procedures working.
Where do you think we are at this moment?
They don't have 216 votes in the House, which is what they need. You know, not the 218 if they had a full complement of members, but with the vacancies, they need 216. And I think they're getting very close, Charlie. Democrats had a big plus today when Dennis Kucinich, who had been a staunch opponent of the bill because it didn't include a public option, announced that he would in the end vote for it. We're in trench warfare going vote by vote, and they're getting close. And my guess is by the time they bring this to the floor, probably over the weekend, they'll just get it over the top, get this through. They'll take an enormous amount of flack along the way, but I think the odds are probably 70-75% that this will end up in some fashion being enacted into law.
And what do they say to the members that are resistant, who may have voted no before and have to go vote yes this time? What's the argument?
Well, for many of those who voted no before, they're actually able to say we've improved this bill, some of the areas that you didn't like. We have made it easier for people to get subsidies and not be caught in a bind where you're required to have insurance for your family. If you don't, you pay a punishing fine. If you do, it's out of your reach financially. We've softened some of the blows in terms of the way the money is allocated. We've taken away some of the concerns that you have with unions, for example, on the high-end insurance plans. We've postponed that. They've got substantive reasons for providing traction for some of those who voted no. And they've also got to, frankly, Charlie, provide a little bit more bucking up and assurance for some who voted yes, who are getting increasingly nervous because of the backlash. And keep in mind as well that one of the things they're telling members is, if you vote with us, we're going to give you all kinds of support, including presidential fundraisers and in other ways. And if not, you may get the worst of both worlds. You could either be responsible for killing health care or vote against it and still face a backlash. So they've got some weapons at their disposal.
So what do you think, Rich?
Well, in the macro, Charlie, it's hard to see how they don't get this. When you have the President of the United States staking just about everything on this, all his political credibility on it, when you have the Speaker of the House doing the same thing, it's hard to see how they don't squeeze those votes out. Now, on the micro level, it's hard to see where the votes come from. And Kucinich is the first definite from no to yes, so that's some progress from them. But we'll see. If they're still 10 votes away at the end of the week, it may not happen. If they get to 3 or 4 votes shy, well, then the way these things usually work, you go to the House floor, even though you're a couple votes shy, you jump off the cliff, and then you go to those 3 or 4 members and say, you better help us pull the ripcord or everyone dies. And that usually works, but it's a huge risk. And if it doesn't work, I mean, we're going to have to go back through the history books to see when a president has suffered such a stunning rebuke from Congress. I don't know what a similar example would be. Do you go back to Wilson in the League of Nations or what? But it'll be a big deal.
On healthcare. It's the same thing as Clinton on
But that
healthcare.
didn't get so close. That didn't
right.
get so close and then lose on
But
a
the
vote.
loss happened at a worse time on the calendar. It happened basically in September before a November election. So you know, it's a.
They have time. Is that what you're saying?
They had no time.
No, they had no time last time.
They had no
now.
time to recover from it.
Right.
And here, you know, if you had a loss in April of this thing, there's a lot that can happen in our world between now and then, including things that can happen in Afghanistan and Iraq and on airplanes, you know, that change everything about our dialogue.
Ezra, where is it?
I think you got to look at two dynamics here. On the one hand, you're seeing the bill become more conservative, right? There's no public option. The subsidies are lower. The Senate bill is much tougher with cost control. And on the other hand, and this is interesting, they picked up a liberal vote. Kucinich, who voted no on the first round, is saying yes this time. They don't need to pick up a lot of votes. They actually just don't need to lose any. They've lost a couple due to death and due to retirement. But so if they bring Kucinich in and they can convince 2 or 3 or 4 Blue Dogs who voted against the bill in the first round that, look, this bill is a lot more like what you said you wanted than the other one was, they're there. So I largely agree with Rich on this. They can't lose, which I think means it's pretty likely that they won't lose. Nancy Pelosi doesn't lose a lot of big votes. Barack Obama really can't afford to lose this one. And I think there are enough folks in the Democratic Party who don't want to go down with the ship that, you know, they'll get it. The problem is, how do you ask the guy to be the no vote when you're letting the guy next to him be the yes vote?
Right. And
that's what they're trying to deal with right now.
The Kucinich vote has a lot of dimensions to it, in my experience in getting votes in the Congress. And I locked him in last week on MSNBC to say absolutely no, I'm voting against it. And so I was wondering how long he was going to be able to stay in that little box.
You were sure he would go to yes.
No, I wasn't. No, not Dennis Kucinich.
Right.
He is exactly the kind of guy who can stay there and say no matter what happens. But the president got him onto Air Force One. He did that rally in Dennis Kucinich's district. On the air that night on MSNBC, I had the woman on the air who the president was talking about on the phone from her hospital bed through me asking Dennis Kucinich to cast a vote yes on this thing. The pressure was huge, but what Nancy Pelosi had to say to him was, Dennis, here's my problem. I'm way shy of the votes that I need right now, and I need to pick them up from the conservative side of my party. Not one of them is going to move as long as they can point at Dennis Kucinich, a very safe liberal who will not vote for a liberal bill. I won't be able to get a single Democrat from the conservative side to move over here unless you move first. So Kucinich is looking at that and he's thinking, you know, there's a very good chance this thing does not become law. There's a very good chance it fails. There's a good chance the House vote fails. A much better chance than usual. I don't want to be the guy who is perceived to have stopped the thing that might die of its own weight anyway. And he really would have, strategically, practically, within the party, absolutely no answer to the speaker saying to him, Dennis, I can't get anybody to your right as long as you're standing there saying no.
It seems to me what he said was, what you would expect him to say, it's better to have half a loaf than a full loaf.
Yeah, but what I like about what he said was, I'm not going to retract my criticisms of the bill.
Right.
The most eloquent criticisms of this bill that I have heard have come from Dennis Kucinich. The Republican criticisms of the bill have been empty. They have been wrong. They have not been based on what's in the bill. This is the most inarticulate, incompetent group of Republicans I've seen on the field in Congress ever. There's so much in this bill that they could legitimately, from a Republican philosophy, attack, and they haven't done it.
Well, I think Mitch McConnell is a pretty good political mechanic and has held his caucus together on this. But I do think, Larry, there's something to what you said. I think the bill more or less has been sinking of its own weight. And the choice here was whether to do kind of learn the lesson of Clinton after his health care bill went down, learn the lesson that Ted Kennedy eventually learned, which is the best way to, if you're a liberal, to expand health care coverage is to do it by salami slice, salami slice, salami slice. Instead, Democrats, especially when you have the kind of majorities you do in the Congress right now, have this FDR complex where they really don't think they're living up to their role in the world unless they create these edifices of huge programs.
Rich